There's Ms. Williams. There she is.
All right, well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the proceedings of the Grand Rapids Public Schools Board of Education. This evening is Monday, March 8th, and International Women's Day. Yes, cheers to my colleagues and to all of our amazing women in this community. So this evening is our work session, and Ms. Lewis, will you please call the roll?
Yes, I will. Dr. Flores?
Present.
Mrs. Grant?
Present.
Ms. Lewis is here. Reverend Matthias?
Present.
Mr. Ross?
Present.
Mrs. Williams?
Present.
Dr. Baker?
I'm here.
Yes, you are. Ms. Davis?
Here.
President Chotke?
I am here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. May I have a motion for approval of this evening's agenda?
So moved.
Support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. We are moving on to our special orders of business. First, Dr. Roby will present on the 18 credit graduation requirements. This is an action item this evening. Dr. Roby.
Good evening, board members and community. I have a special request. We are asking that the board consider the resolution, the 2020 resolution, and apply it for 2021 of our graduation requirements. This is a continuance of the temporary amendment of the graduation requirements for the spring of 2021 graduating class. Last spring, the board temporarily amended Board Policy 7630, which provided that graduates that met all GRPS requirements, which include dual enrollment, early middle college programs, and theme school options, which exceed the state's minimum graduation requirements. So GRPS requires 22, the state of Michigan requires 18. We're requesting, due to the continued conditions related to navigating school and some of the barriers that our young people have faced during the pandemic, that those who meet the course completion are allowed and meet the Michigan Merit Curriculum high school graduation requirements of 18 credits be allowed to graduate from Grand Rapids Public Schools at the conclusion of the 2021 school year. You will find the full resolution in the board docs for review. And I just wanted to bring that forward. And if there are questions, we will ask Executive Director Rodney Lewis to come forward, and he can kind of unpack some things as well.
Thank you, Dr. Roby. Are there any questions or discussion regarding this request? Okay, hearing none. Yes.
I'm sorry, I do have a couple questions.
Sure.
I'm wondering if we have an idea of the number of graduates that we're talking about. So those that would meet our 22 and those that would meet our 18, what does that look like? And then also for some of our schools like City, the IB programs and so forth, how is this resolution affecting that? Certainly Montessori as well. So I'm just wondering how that pans itself out, given the diversity of schools that we have, and high schools in particular.
Great questions. I will ask Craig Garib to bring Mr. Lewis forward. He might be able to answer the specifics around specifically the 18 versus 22 and how many students fall into each category, and then the follow-up related to the specific schools. Hey, Mr. Lewis, welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hello. So it's approximately affecting about 150 students. We have a graduating class of about 650 students overall. And as it relates to City or Montessori or any high school that we have, the graduation requirements will remain the same. So once we hopefully pass this resolution, everyone will go to 18 credits, and it will affect every student that is in the graduating class of 2021 the same.
And then in regards to any scholarship, would that affect?
So So it will not affect any scholarships, but it is very important that we, get the students that are in the class of 2021 across the stage so that they will have a diploma that they can take to someone's college or university this fall. So it's very important that we look to make this recommendation whole so that we can begin the process of getting kids across the stage.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any other questions for Mr. Lewis regarding this request?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. If there's no other discussion, may I have a motion for approval of this resolution?
I think you already have one, don't you?
I'm sorry if I missed it.
Do we have a motion before John makes questions?
No, I don't think we did.
Oh, I'm sorry.
A motion to approve.
Second,
Thank you. Ms. Lewis, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Dr. Flores,
Yes.
Ms. Grant,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis, yes, Reverend Matias,
Yes.
Mr. Ross,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Dr. Baker,
yes.
Ms. Davis, Ms. Davis,
Yes.
President Chaki,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Our next agenda item is the Enrollment Equity Project Final Report. I believe that's you, Mr. Helmholtz.
Yep, President Shockey. I'm just losing you for a minute. Bear with me. President Shockey, members of the board, pleased to share along with my colleagues, Mel Atkins and Larry Johnson, Chief Larry Johnson, that we are coming to the conclusion of our equity enrollment audit. And while it may seem like it's been forever, in many ways, it's been a lot longer than expected because we had a global pandemic that we did not anticipate. The good news is that our friend and colleague from Denver, Brian Eschbacher, who's one of the leading experts across the country in equity enrollment, unified enrollment, and has played a role in consulting some of the largest districts in this nation. His work has continued virtually, has been able to facilitate extensive engagement with a myriad of stakeholders. And really tonight's agenda was really nothing more than to inform you that at your next regularly scheduled meeting, Brian will be there to present the high-level executive summary and recommendations. At the conclusion of this board, we will be sending you the full report, which I believe is 80 or so pages. And then, of course, there's an executive summary in the presentation. We are eager to not only present the final report to you, but we're also eager for the next chapter. As I know the board, through your leadership, obviously with Superintendent Leader in Roby and her administration, we've been taking on this two-tier system. And what you will see in that final, I know Brian has provided some updates throughout this process, but we are very excited about the future. We believe this report has really put a spotlight on some of those challenges and inequities that were inherent and within our systems. And it has taken the leadership of the board, our not so new superintendent, and then the support of our esteemed consultant to bring us to where we are. And we look forward to that presentation a week from now and the next steps that will likely require some action on the board in order for us to implement some of the future for the recommendations and suggestions. So I'll leave it there. Dr. Roby, is there anything else in particular you wanted me to cover? I know Brian is with us on the line if we need to pull him in, but this was intended to be an informative, give everyone a heads up that report's coming and that it'll be on your agenda next week.
That does cover it. Thank you for the brief overview. And I do certainly appreciate the reference of the not so new. I'm starting to feel like I'm home. Thank you.
That's right. Well, March is I Love Reading Month, and so we board members are not escaping that, are we? We have reports and proposals to read, and I am delighted to see that. report at the end of today's meeting, and excited to hear from our consultant. This is great. Thank you so much, Mr. Helmholt. Any questions for John before we let him go? Okay, watch your inboxes. All right, next I'm going to invite our Vice President Williams to discuss this year's superintendent evaluation. Ms. Williams.
Thank you, President Shockey. So today I just want to go over some of the things for us as board members to look to as we go through this evaluation with Dr. Roby for the 2021 year. The evaluation cycle for us will finalize with Dr. Roby's evaluation in December of 2021. Dr. Roby will provide us with quarterly updates of her work throughout the year, with the first being in April. She'll follow up with us in July and October as well this year, just to provide us those updates. At our work session on November 8th, 2021, Dr. Roby will present her full evidence to the board. The board will have the time to review, request clarity and additional evidence before our December 6th meeting on 2021, and that'll be a work session as well. This work session, we will review the characteristics and provide a consensus rating. I recommend that we use the standard that we used previously, which would be the highest level of agreement. I hope there is no opposition to that. While Dr. Roby has selected 11 characteristics for this year's evaluation, and she will focus on those 11, she does also need to provide us with some continued support for the characteristics from her last evaluation. So in total, we will be looking at 21 characteristics, but the focal will be on the 11 for this year. And by the time she's done with her third year, she would have covered all the characteristics. So as well as there are 3 rating levels: minimally effective, effective, and highly effective. And I want to share with my colleagues, as you're reviewing the evidence, some of the language that we would like you to look for. For minimally effective, we will be looking for that to be demonstrated by the language of I do, which will show the superintendent's capacity. With effective, we will be looking for a demonstration in language such as we do. And this will show the superintendent's capacity to train, lead, and collaborate. With highly effective, we are looking for the they do language, which will show Dr. Roby's capacity to foster, enhance, and share leadership with her team. These levels of rating should be supported with 3 types of evidence as well. And we have work accomplishments, changes in conditions that support or impact teaching and learning. If there's any questions about that, I can give more details. And then the last is the changes in student performance and growth rate. Lastly, the superintendent will focus on 2 priorities for herself that line up with the district priorities. And then we will get to the ever looming domain 1, which we are always wondering, what are we doing with domain 1 given COVID? The guidance that we have been given is that we can leave domain 1 scoreless with regards to the state standards. And then she will share with us what we will use for the local. So we know that of that 40% of the domain 1A, 20% of that is from state growth measures and 20% is from local growth measures. So Dr. Roby will share with us what she will use for the local. And unless there's been some other legal advisement by our counsel, we will probably remain with the domain going scoreless, but they did offer that if we wanted to, and if Dr. Roby wanted to, that she could use the most recent results available from state assessments. So we know that was quite a while ago, several years, and it really was not her work. So she can make that decision with the help of legal counsel. But From there, I will turn it over to Dr. Roby to share with us her presentation if there's no questions from my colleagues.
All right. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So just very quickly, thank you, Mrs. Williams, for that overview. And what I wanted to do, as I've become more familiar and I'm the not so new superintendent, is to formulate this in a way that makes sense for all of us, where it's easy to track. And so as Mrs. Williams alluded to with Domain 1, we are actually waiting on clarification from the federal government, which will talk about what assessments we are allowed to use. At present, our state superintendent has a request in from the U.S. Department of Education related to doing a summative assessment, which would be typically the M-STEP, or if we're able to do benchmark assessments, which would be something like the NWA or MAP assessments. And the rationale behind that is because, we've been in our the second school year, I should say, of a pandemic, and the conditions and validity of assessments they're varied because students are in various configurations, whether they're virtually or in person, and what that has looked like for families and for students. And so it is important to measure growth, but we want to make sure that as we are measuring growth of our students and giving feedback specific to their areas of improvement and areas of refinement, that it's helpful. And that same thing for teachers, so that as they're working very closely with their students and their families, they're able to give to form their instructional practices around that. And so the remaining domains, domains 2, 3, 4, and 5, what I tried to do is highlight both. And so what you see highlighted in yellow was actually my evaluation characteristics from July 2020 through December 2020. And the ones that are highlighted in orange would be this year. So from January 2021 through December of 2021. And to show, again, the ones that are, of course, are not highlighted would be the remaining goals that we will work on into the 2022 school year. So just walking very quickly through each of the domains to tell you kind of the overview of why I selected these particular items to kind of frame the work that we're doing. Under mission and vision, a lot of this to me, it was the meatier part of the rubric. So everything that we have planned for 2021 with our strategic planning process and kind of that large umbrella of all that it will include, the work that we're doing with construction and facilities and operations, all of those things to me are kind of the bulk of the lift this year. And I wanted to make sure that as I am going through this school year, that it's very aligned to goals. And then my team, also the team, district cabinet, and others will have their goals aligned as well. So under the large umbrella of Domain 2, which is a leadership goal, it's mission and vision. This will include strategic planning. All of our strategic planning should be framed by this. What is our mission and our vision? And then subsequently having goals and expectations. So you can't just have a mission and vision without having expectations and outcomes of what you expect to see. Under goal B, culture, the values, beliefs, principles, and diversity. And again, those things all will be under the umbrella of our mission and vision and part of our equity and action. So all the things that we're saying that these are the things that we are, our goal and where we're striving to grow. It's also important to remember we have to be able to layer it with the values of the organization, the beliefs, the principles that drive our work moving forward. In Domain 3, the safe, effective, and efficient programs and services, I selected 3B3 and 3B4, and the rationale behind that, resource allocation and management, that goes to facilities, operations. We have a construction project, and we're talking about construction work that will take place, programs for our school sites, and that includes, as we are doing and have just completed the enrollment equity audit and how we'll implement those programs, the academies that we've talked about further developing at some of our secondary programs, and then a strong international baccalaureate articulation from our elementary all the way up through our high school program. So those are all kind of components or examples of what that may look like. Under 3B4, personnel policies and practices, again, our strategic planning should be driving the work around how are we hiring, recruiting, retaining great employees, keeping them in our pipeline, and making sure that we have strong support so that people want to be a part of the GRPS system. Under domain 4, which is processes, and again, it's the orange that we are looking at for the 2021 school year. So the first one under processes would be A4. So for A4, communications and media relations. And I'm going to have you put just a little asterisk around that. That would be one of the focus areas that I am continuing to wanting to spend more emphasis on. And again, I see that is as a way to how do we make sure that our families and our community know what's going on in GRPS, and we have multiple avenues to get information out, and that we are also being very intentional about what information goes out to our families around different programs that impact our district, other advocacy and other things that take place that affect GRPS directly. And that may look similar to kind of the work that we've already talked about, like our weekly Wednesdays, communications through expos, looking at our current conditions and making sure that we do not allow the conditions that are outside of our control stop us from getting information out to our broader GRPS community. And then for myself personally, around my continued growth and development, being more comfortable and familiar with the media outlets right here in the Grand Rapids area, and doing my own professional development around growth and PR opportunities to continually promote our district. Under 4B2, systemic use of multiple data sources, and how that may look would be surveys, analysis of that survey work, and who's invited and how we continually engage. It also includes implementation plans. So it's not just doing surveys, but what do we do with the information once we collect it? How is our broader community, how are you as board members being engaged, and then saying, okay, this is the data, and then how we are recommending that it be used and move forward. With respect to 4B4, aligned improvement, monitoring, and reporting, again, it's the same as above. It's like you collect all these different data sources, and then how is that information being communicated out more broadly. Under domain 5, which is capacity, it's around productivity. And that one, I think, is how I kind of wrapped it in my own mind, is empowering myself and others to disseminate innovative information and adaptive ideas. So student recovery plans, the ESSR implementation plan that we are beginning to develop, and and all the work that we're doing, again, with the strategic planning, with the renovation of our programs. And we should be able to have a volume of work. So at the end of 2021 to say, okay, here are the things that we listed as priorities, and these are the things that we were able to accomplish. And to be able to kind of check off and say, out of the 200 things, and I don't know if that's the number, but let's just say out of the 200 things, we had a goal of trying to complete from beginning to end 180 of them, and we met that goal. And so being really clear on, again, what needs to be accomplished and what we're able to accomplish within a reasonable time frame. And the final item under capacity is 5B2, which is education and advocacy, and that's continually build outreach efforts for our GRPS students, and that's including partnerships with the city. And so when I'm saying partnerships, it's not just my own personal relationship, but it's the relationship with the board and other stakeholders as they work with the city, with GRPSF, with working very closely with colleges and elected officials to help shape the legislative agenda and priorities. We most recently had a legislative luncheon 2 weeks ago. That would be an example of that, where we as the board and myself had conversations, and we included some of our building leaders from Palmer Elementary to talk about what our needs were as they are going into their legislative session. And that would be an example, as Mrs. Williams kind of alluded to, what I do, what we do, and what they do. And so that's kind of an example of that trajectory. And again, how all this work builds into our strategic plan. So if we're saying that these are the items that are lifted up in our strategic plan, when we're meeting with elected officials, we're meeting with foundation members to say, here's the work that we're trying to do, and this is what we expect our outcomes to be. And so I know I kind of went through that really quickly, and as promised, at the end of at our April board meeting, I plan on doing a PowerPoint with some more specific examples, but I wanted to frame it up for all of the boards so that they would know what I was thinking and what I was suggesting as the areas of focus for the 2021 January to December part of the year. Are there questions that I can answer?
So board colleagues, the vote this evening is to approve these 10 characteristics for Dr. Roby's evaluation this year. And as Ms. Williams stated, those will be in addition to the 11 previous, but these will be have a heavier focus from a evidence standpoint from Dr. Roby, although she will continue to touch on those 11 other characteristics that we evaluated her on last year. So that's the action item this evening, is in regards to approving these 10 that are highlighted in orange. So are there any questions, or is there any discussion about the 10 that are proposed?
So for the ones from the last evaluation, will we be given we'll be given an update, but we won't use those for her actual evaluation, correct?
The way that I understood it, Ms. Davis, is that I might do just kind of a broad kind of sweeping and saying, okay, because as you know, out of the 32 items or 31 items, many of them overlap. So they're not siloed where they're separate from one another. And so as an example, if I just go to, it's a quick one where I can just tie two together. The 5B 1 and 2, education and advocacy and contextual political awareness really are hand in hand. So the example of the legislative agenda, yes, we're talking about what the priority should be as our local elected officials are going to the state to create laws and recommendations for individual schools, but then we're giving them the GRPS context, and because they're elected officials, we have to have some political awareness around what they feel is important and kind of drawing those attention to those. So that's a long way around saying the orange ones are the ones that I'm going to kind of give more specific examples, and then I will try to, when it makes sense, to try to say, and this is where it fits into political and contextual awareness.
Yeah. I would just like to throw out there for the yellow ones from last year, where you maybe didn't get, where we had a little bit lower, where I believe there were a couple that were effective, not highly effective. But I'd like to hear just an update on those ones in particular, because I know you're going to show growth in those areas, and it might be nice to hear how you've improved in those. Does that make sense?
And if I remember correctly, it was just one. And I don't remember which one it was, but yeah, I can certainly do that.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, make sure you count, Kim. It's just the one.
I wasn't meaning to say there were a bunch.
It's my understanding of the process, although we have only done kind of this first iteration for the last several years, just because of the cadence of leadership in our district, that all are evaluated. We will reference all 21 characteristics now, but that the new 10 are the ones that we hear more from Dr. Roby from an evidence standpoint. Ms. Williams, please correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I believe that's the case.
Yes, that's the case. And the ideal of us is to have completely, in a 3-year period, evaluated her on all of the areas. And so while again, I think it's a great idea that Kim brought up, just an area that maybe was not highly effective, address that, or areas that you personally wanted to do more in, really highlight those from last year, but it is not something that is going to be the primary focus. When we look at the evaluation, it will be primarily on those 11 characteristics from this year.
And I also shared with both Mrs. Shockey, President Shockey, and Vice President Williams, the why around even the two highlighted ones, leadership development and communications and media relations. I think that those are, I mean, they're all very important, and you know, everything has a ebb and flow. But even as I've kind of gotten more familiar with this, we want to make sure that I'm giving you, I want to do more than check the box, so to speak. I want to make sure that I'm giving you all an opportunity to dialogue back and forth with me if the work that I am doing and that our team is doing, that we're presenting to you, that you're able to see examples of it along the way, so it doesn't feel like a data dump at the end of the school year. Because I know, you know, last year was a very condensed time frame, and you know, trying to make sure that we had evidence, I want to make sure that it's an ongoing dialogue. So I am certainly open to, you know, feedback on any of the areas that previously were part of the 2020 cycle that you're like, oh, how are you doing with this? And I should be able, or my team and I should be able to say, yes, this is what it's looked like this past year.
Other questions? Okay, then let's move forward to the action item, which will be a vote to approve these 10 characteristics for evaluation this year. As Ms. Williams noted, as soon as we have more clarity around domain one, especially with what's happening legislatively, we'll bring that back for vote for approval. So we'll land on which growth measurements we're going to use for domain one, but we'll just give that a little bit as we wait for more to flesh itself out at the federal level. So
I motion
go
to
ahead.
approve the 10 characteristics.
Support. Thank you, thank you, Dr. Flores. Ms. Lewis, please call the roll.
Ms. Lewis, yes. Reverend Matias?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Dr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Flores?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
President Shockey?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. And thank you, Ms. Williams and Dr. Roby, for your work on this. All right, our final agenda item this evening is in regards to our strategic planning RFP and the proposals that we received last Friday. Well, I am delighted to report that 16 firms have expressed their interest in partnering with Grand Rapids Public Schools. And if you are like me, you are just elated that so many firms would look at our district and see that this is a place where we have the capacity and the energy and the community support to do extraordinary work for our students. But if you're also like me, 16 proposals is more than you anticipated. And as we dove into the content of those proposals, it became so evident to me that this work is truly about partnership between this Board of Education as we set the priorities for the district, and partnership with our district leadership as they prepare to implement those district priorities and effectively make the changes that the results of this strategic planning firm work lead to. As such, I'm recommending this evening that we slightly elongate the timeline to ensure that both district leadership and we, the Board of Education, have the time we need to digest, inspect, and use our rubric to make our best decision for moving forward with a strategic planning firm. And so tonight, I want to discuss what that elongated timeline is going to look like, not by too much, but just, again, enough time to make sure that executive cabinet, district leadership, and each of us has the time to look through these proposals. So let's walk that through. So Executive Cabinet is going to spend this week looking at proposals, and they are going to use the same guiding rubric that was provided to us as the Board of Education to make some recommendations on top firms to move forward to interview. While that is happening, we are simultaneously going to be doing that work as the Board of Education individually. So that on Monday, next Monday, March 15th, we will come together during the special work session that was already scheduled at 4:30 to discuss our ratings of the top firms for each of us individually, and to find that consensus around the 3 firms that we would like to invite to interview virtually the following week. So we are proposing to schedule those firm interviews on Monday, March 22nd. You should have noted an email from Julie today requesting your availability the evening of the 22nd. I've asked our treasurer, Reverend Matthias, if we may be able to move finance up by an hour to 4:30. He's confirmed that does work with his schedule, so we'll reach out to the balance of finance committee to make sure that works with your schedules. If that works, then I'm proposing we begin interviewing firms at 5:30 on Monday, March 22nd. From there, I'm asking for one more day of your time, which would be that 5th Monday of March, March 29th, for a brief special work session to vote on our approval of the firm that we're going to choose to work with. So high level, on the 15th, we will do our consensus rating and determine which 3 firms we're going to invite to interview. On the 22nd, we'll conduct those interviews. And on the 29th, we will vote on the firm that we're going to partner with on this work. Yes, Ms. Grant.
Question. I'm getting this all in. So I thought in the email that we got earlier today, I thought there was a different time for the 22nd. So I just want to confirm the times one more time for the 15th and the 29th. Can you give those to me again just to confirm?
Absolutely. And you are correct. Between sending the email and this meeting, we've been trying to make enough time for those interviews. So forgive me. Thanks for your grace. And here's the times again. Yeah. So the 22nd so the 15th is that 4:30 special work session as already scheduled. That one should already be on your calendar. We'll keep that. The 22nd, we begin interviews at 5:30 p.m. And then on the 29th for the vote, just that short special work session, I'm proposing 5:30 on the 29th. Does anyone have any immediate conflict with any of those days or times? Thank you, everybody, for looking at your calendars. So while this work is going on of reviewing the proposals, Dr. Baker is also going to convene the ad hoc committee that developed the RFP to work with Executive Cabinet on developing interview questions. And so I also encourage you, if you have specific questions that you'd like to ensure that we ask planning firms, to please send those to either Dr. Baker or Mr. Helmholt as they work to develop those interview questions.
Just real quick, I don't know if if Julie or anyone is on there, but we will need to convene that group sometime. And just to elaborate on the need to have that, even though we all have experience hiring, going through the superintendent search process, it's a bit different, especially with firms. And Sharon Pitts has let us know that we need to make sure that we follow appropriate rubrics and have appropriate mechanisms in place for asking the same questions of everyone, having a common scoring sheet, et cetera. So when Jen and I discussed this, and Sharon Pitts, let us know her concerns, we decided that it would be easiest to just have the ad hoc committee reconvene with recommendations from Sharon Pitts to make sure that we're following appropriate question guidelines. Essentially, the questions would flow from the RFP and the rubric we're already using. I thought that we could use it to make sure that we all get a chance to ask questions. So turn it into 9 or 10 questions. So that way we can each play a role in the process. And we also need to make sure that we can get 30-minute interviews done as well. So that's the rationale, and you can send it to anybody. And I'm actually blanking on everybody on the ad hoc committee. So myself, Kim, if you're on the ad hoc committee, raise your hand. Wave your hands in the air.
Ms. Grant, Reverend Matias, and Ms. Davis, it looks like.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. Okay, so that's the group. So anyway, it's I guess is Kathy the only one that's read all through every single one of them? It looked really.
I'm an overachiever. Remember, I'm an overachiever.
As much as I love to be an overachiever, I will give her the crown on that one.
Yeah, that's good, because it was overwhelming when I saw. And then not only it wasn't so much, and I don't mind overwhelming. It's like, but I had no idea of how to assess these people's abilities to do the work that they were saying that they would do, and they range from, you know, $20 to $1 million, and I was like, I didn't.
Well, that's not exactly
something like
the
that.
range.
I guess this is a recorded meeting, but 30,000 to
Bigger.
300,000. So
I
it
was-
was like,
I was the one, Tony, that suggested that we don't do this cheap. But now when I see what these things cost on average, you know, I might be interested in a little cheaper than some of these because.
All right, everyone.
Now,
well, I guess we're deliberating on who to choose.
Yeah,
I think that we need the people that can do it best. This
I'm
is
sorry.
10
That's
years, 10 years of
Cost.
$200 million budgets that we're planning for. So
Cost is only a component of a robust and worthy proposal. There are extraordinary qualifications of the individuals that you are going to read, from those that have in-depth local knowledge to firms that have vast experience in working with urban districts like ours. So I am so excited for you to dive into the content. You're really going to see some extraordinary proposals and people. And please use that rubric that has been developed to evaluate the firms. There is 4 different criteria that we're asking you to use when evaluating, or 4 different ratings, I suppose, from exceeded expectations, meets expectations, minimal expectations, or did not meet expectations. It's those 4 criteria that we're really going to use to see who rises to the top. And again, you'll see that there are many areas that we are evaluating the effectiveness of these firms. And so that's the work ahead. And this next week is to really come prepared on the 15th to have this discussion about which firms have risen to the top.
President,
Ms. Lewis, did you have a question? Yeah,
are we going to do all of this virtual?
that's correct. Yes. Yep. Through the end of March, we will remain virtual. Correct.
thanks for keeping us professional there.
Always.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Any other discussion? Okay.
I have
Yes.
one request, if possible. You know, while I love technology and computer and whatnot, shifting back and forth as I was reading all of these, and I did extensively read them and
Yeah.
even rated them. But you know, I'll go back through. What I didn't do was use the rubric to the degree that it needs to be used, but just making copies. I think that in preparation of discussion, and if we'll call it deliberation as to, you know, which ones rise to the top and for what reasons, it would be helpful, at least for me, to have a physical copy of each, because you know, when we discuss qualifications of individuals that will be the leads, or when we discuss, you know, what is great detail, as it did it exceed expectations, or did it even meet our expectations with respect to the planning process, or to the deliverables, or to, you know, the timeline, the specificity required, the qualifications of the staff. All of those things raised questions, and I had, you know, certainly some that I would like to refer to, but it would take, online skills and
Yeah.
computer skills are sometimes not as effective for me as moving through and tagging things and saying, I really like this resume because this person had engaged in an equity audit at such school, or this firm that had done urban schools and rural schools and southern schools and eastern schools. I mean, all of those things, have some weight. So a very simple request, could I get a hard copy?
Absolutely.
So, Dr. Flores,
Yeah.
can I offer, excuse me, I'm sorry, President Shockey.
Please.
Would it be easier, and since he mentioned, Dr. Flores mentioned that our team tried to get a hard copy to all of you of all 15 proposals with an attached rubric for each individual group
That would help.
over the next 2 days?
Only
And I
8.
know tomorrow won't work. I mean, tomorrow may be a little short for us, but if we could have until maybe Wednesday evening to get
Sure.
something to each of you, we'll work that out.
don't
Don't
need
send
one.
me one.
Thank you.
I don't
Okay, so Mrs. Lewis does not want one. Okay,
save at least one tree.
okay.
Yeah.
So any board member that would like a hard copy, will you please just email Julie with your request, and then we'll work with district administration to get those distributed.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can appreciate we all have different learning and reading styles.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Flores. Any additional discussion or questions about our new timeline? Okay, well, thank you. I'm going to keep saying it. It's our marathon year. You're all hanging in there with me. So thank you so much for giving additional time. This work is so exciting. I am just, again, grateful and excited and just humbled by the firms that have said Grand Rapids Public Schools is